Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. One of the world's most sensitive conflict zones is heating up again. Last month, Armenian and Azerbaijani forces clashed and at least 17 people were killed. It is the latest twist in the long-running dispute over Nagorno-Karabakh. Well, my guest today is Armenia's Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan. Is Armenia preoccupied with fighting old battles? Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan in Yerevan, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you. Hi.
It's more than 2 years now since you swept into power with very high hopes for the so-called Velvet Revolution. When I look at Armenia today, it seems many Armenians feel that those hopes have been dashed. What has gone wrong?
I wouldn't agree with your impression because all citizens of Armenia, they are free and they are living in democratic country. And in 2019, we had biggest economic growth in Europe, and we had big economic success. And our country made tremendous progress in all international ratings in terms of democracy, freedom of speech, independent judiciary, anti-corruption policy, and international magazines 2 years in a row recognized Armenia as a country of the year, like not only in terms of democracy but in terms of economy as well. Yes, of course, the pandemic situation interrupted our flight, but we will continue.
Yeah, I want to talk about the pandemic because I know it's been very difficult for Armenia to deal with it. But before we get to that, I want to look at one other aspect of your administration which perhaps hasn't seen the change that some people expected. You came to power talking about finding a path to peace with Azerbaijan, and yet in the last month we've seen new fighting, new conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. We've seen at least 17 military personnel killed on both sides. It looks as though it's business as usual, not change.
Peace can't be achieved through the unilateral actions of Armenia because we will be able to have real peace if Azerbaijan will reciprocate Armenians' efforts. Becoming Prime Minister of Armenia, I proposed a new formula for peace, and the formula is following. Any solution of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict should be acceptable for people of Armenia, for people of Nagorno-Karabakh, and for people of Azerbaijan. And I'm first Armenian leader ever saying that any solution of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict should be acceptable for Azerbaijani people too. But unfortunately, Azerbaijani president didn't reciprocate to my proposal.
But actions speak louder than words, Prime Minister, and what we saw in mid-July was Armenian forces shelling villages across the line of conflict, and we saw, according to the Azerbaijanis, a 76-year-old civilian killed, which then, of course, produced a tit-for-tat response and the prolonged military clash. I put it to you again that your policies do not appear to be designed to achieve peace.
Azerbaijan started military attack against the Armenia, and it wasn't separate action. Within long time, Azerbaijani president developed bellicose rhetoric saying that he is going to solve Nagorno-Karabakh conflict using military force. As a result of that bellicose rhetoric, Azerbaijani government is facing the challenge to explain their own society why they couldn't solve Nagorno-Karabakh conflict through force.
You say that the Azerbaijanis started it, and they, of course, say that you started it. And I dare say I'm not going to resolve that on Hard Talk today. But what is quite clear is that you, over months, have taken a series of provocative actions which have heightened tensions in Nagorno-Karabakh. For example, why last year in August did you go to Stepanakert in Nagorno-Karabakh and make a speech saying Artsakh, which is what you call Nagorno-Karabakh, is Armenia, period, and then led a crowd in a chant, a nationalist chant of unification? That was clearly a provocation to Azerbaijan.
First, I can understand the situation of international community every time hearing mutual accusation of each other, who started, who violated ceasefire. That's why, and this continues again and again within long time. And that's why we're proposing to establish international mechanisms for ceasefire, for investigating ceasefire violations. And this is valid proposal by Armenia. Second, why I said that Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh is Armenia. First of all, Nagorno-Karabakh for several thousand years is populated by indigenous Armenian people, and by the way, Artsakh name is aged for several thousand years.
Yeah, Prime Minister, it's not.
We are
to be
mutual,
honest with you, it's not.
common,
we can't go through thousands of years of your history. What we can do is address the realities of today. The UN General Assembly, as you well know, hang on. The UN General Assembly has adopted a resolution which quite clearly, quote, demands the immediate, complete, unconditional withdrawal of all Armenian forces from the occupied territories of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Now that's from the UN General Assembly. Under international law, your forces are a force of occupation. You choose to go there and talk about that territory being yours. You clearly are not a peacemaker.
The document of UN Security Council didn't mention Republic of Armenia or Armed Force of Republic of Armenia. There is written about of Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians self-defending forces. It's first. Second, you proposed to look at reality. Reality is that in the moment of the start of this conflict, 18% of population of Nagorno-Karabakh were Armenians. And Azerbaijan tried to clean this land from Armenian, and conflict started from this moment.
But my question, Prime Minister, is about how you make good on your initial promise to pursue peace. For example, I note that your government plans to build a new road from Armenia into Nagorno-Karabakh following a southern route which goes through a whole swathe of Azerbaijani territory. Now, a group of MEPs in Brussels who've looked at this plan and who specialize in Caucasus politics have described it as a violation of international law. It will symbolically entrench the illegal occupation of Nagorno-Karabakh. We very much deplore this initiative. Will you stop building that road?
It isn't Armenian government to build any road in Nagorno-Karabakh. It's Nagorno-Karabakh government acting in the framework of interest of her own population. And you know, in Karabakh, people are living. Human beings are living, and they have needs for supplies, needs for food, needs for mobility, And Azerbaijan, by the way, is exercising the policy of isolation and blockade for Nagorno-Karabakh, and by the way, for Armenia too.
Prime Minister, I began this interview by saying that you came to power with a revolution with very high hopes of change and reform. But on this issue of Armenia, its nationalist position on Nagorno-Karabakh, the strategy that you are pursuing, which looks, frankly, as though it doesn't have a meaningful peace element to it, you seem just like your predecessors. You don't seem any different. Where is the evidence that on this core issue for the Armenian people, you're bringing something different to the table?
I won't agree with you naming our position nationalistic, because Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh are under existential threat. And what are we proposing? We are proposing Azerbaijan to renounce any possibility of use of force for Nagorno-Karabakh conflict solution. We should agree on very simple formula. There is no military solution for Nagorno-Karabakh conflict.
All right.
Yeah,
I understand the point you're making there. Let me just flip this debate around a little bit. You came to power after a career as a journalist, as a human rights defender, and you even spent some time in prison as a political prisoner. You care about human rights. So I wonder if to reach out to Azerbaijan and to indicate that you really are different from your predecessors, are you now prepared to say that in the past, particularly in the early 1990s and late 1980s, the Armenian forces committed some major human rights abuses, crimes of war inside Nagorno-Karabakh? Many independent observers have catalogued those crimes. Are you now prepared to acknowledge them and say sorry for them?
Any war is a chain of tragedies. That's why we're saying that let's refuse any possibility of using force for solution of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. And any peace is compromise. And Armenia always was ready and is ready for compromise. But from the other side,
I'm asking you a very specific question. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, are you now prepared to say sorry for example, the European Court of Human Rights catalogue of violations of human rights on the part of the Armenian military? Will you say sorry?
European Court has similar catalogue on Azerbaijani's atrocities.
But I'm not talking to the Azerbaijanis, I'm talking to you.
Let me to answer your question, please. And we should mention the Sumgait events that happened in late 1980s, when Azerbaijani government and Azerbaijanis initiated pogroms against the Armenians of Sumgait city in Azerbaijan, in Azerbaijani capital, and this whole issue is an issue.
I just wanted to know whether you're prepared to take responsibility and apologize for those abuses and crimes committed by Armenia's forces. It's quite simple, yes or no.
It should be proved who exercised these atrocities, and I think Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh and Azerbaijan are victims, and we can prove that. Anywhere, anytime.
Clearly, you're not going to say sorry, and I just wonder whether you feel that right now it's helpful for you to raise the tensions in Nagorno-Karabakh with Azerbaijan to take some of the scrutiny and pressure off your government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Because, frankly, looking at the way your government has handled it, it hasn't been a success, has it? Indeed, it has been a real failure of your government.
I think it is too early to have conclusion, because unfortunately, pandemic is an evolving situation all over the world. And we adopted a strategy how to fight pandemic in our country, and this strategy should have been, and it was and it is appropriate for our country. And let's make conclusion when globally the pandemic would be fight.
But Prime Minister, your own people are drawing conclusions already. They see that your death rate from COVID-19 is approximately 6 times higher than neighboring Georgia, and indeed significantly higher than Azerbaijan's. If you look at the region as a whole, Armenia has suffered much more severe impacts from COVID-19, which suggests that your government failed to control it.
We are in the process of overcoming this pandemic, and as I said, it is too early to make conclusions on that, because unfortunately, all over the world, the pandemic is continuing to grow.
But Prime Minister,
now Armenia is in the process of...
People judge you on your specific actions. For example, in late May, you attended a dinner, which was actually to celebrate the inauguration of the self-styled president leader of Nagorno-Karabakh. It was a dinner where you were seen amongst many people socializing, not wearing a face mask, and only a few weeks later, in early and mid-June, your country was in the midst of a terrible crisis with more than 600 cases of COVID-19 per day, and you castigated your own people, saying people simply disobey the rules on face masks, but you've done it yourself.
On that day, we were acting according to the regulations that existed, I mean legal regulation that existed in Nagorno-Karabakh. And so we are following after rules that is underway in our country or in Nagorno-Karabakh or elsewhere.
Well, it didn't look like leadership. You know that your opponents in Yerevan are now saying, and I'm quoting the Republican Party, who have issued a statement saying, one does not fight the coronavirus like this Prime Minister, with live streams, selfie pictures and jumping around. You are, that is talking to you are the responsible one for a disgraceful situation, and you have made so many mistakes. You should resign.
And Armenia is a democratic country, and opposition is free to express himself. And I'm very glad that now opposition in Armenia is acting much easily than before revolution.
You talk of democracy in Armenia being strengthened under your administration, and I referred to your past as an independent journalist and a political prisoner. However, Human Rights Watch, in its report on your country in 2020, has concluded that investigations into past violence and excessive use of force by law enforcement remain very limited. Violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, discrimination against and segregation of people with disabilities, all of these things persist in Armenia today.
Freedom House, renowned organization, announced in its report that Armenia made biggest 2 years progress in democracy, rule of law, human rights protection ever within the whole existence of that kind of report. Well, Freedom House, internationally recognized organization, said that Armenia made biggest progress ever within 2 years.
Yeah, and I've just told you what Human Rights Watch have concluded. There are people inside your country who fear that your agenda right now isn't so much about rooting out corruption as hitting back at some of your political enemies, in particular the decision you've taken to suspend 3 judges on the Constitutional Court who were blocking investigations into ex-President Khocharyan. That looks politically motivated. Is that what's driving you right now?
As far as Constitutional Court is concerned, I should stress that we tried to have constitutional court fully compliant with our constitution, because we had description of constitutional court in our constitution, but we had totally different constitutional court in reality. So we are going and we are doing that to have constitutional court fully compliant with our constitution. As far as criminal cases are concerned, or arrests, etc., I should stress that we have courts, we have investigation bodies, and we have prosecutor offices, and it isn't me to decide who should be detained and who should be released. Our purpose is rule of law, independent judiciary, and anti-corruption policy. And international community recognized our huge success on all those areas.
Let me end, Prime Minister, with a strategic question. Armenia is in a tough neighborhood, and you basically have a strategic choice. You can continue to look to Moscow for your main partnership and alliance, or you can perhaps begin to look much more toward the European Union and NATO. The choice is yours. Which way are you going to take Armenia?
Russia is a strategic partner of Armenia in terms of security. We are member of Eurasian Economic Union, which is economic union, and we have comprehensive and enhanced partnership agreement with European Union. And by the way, now European Union is our main partner in our reform agenda implementation. We have quite effective cooperation with NATO, and by the way, we are participating in peacekeeping mission in Afghanistan, in Lebanon, in Kosovo, in Mali.
But Prime Minister,
we have
let me stop you.
Effective military
let me stop you for a second.
with the United States too.
Yeah, let me stop you for a second. Geopolitics involves some tough choices. If you really want to be close to the EU and NATO, you've got problems because you have a toxic relationship with Turkey right now, and you have a relationship with the United States which is troubled because you insist on maintaining trade relations with Iran when the Americans have asked you to impose sanctions upon Iran and you have refused. So you have choices to make, and I ask you again, is your fundamental choice to stay loyal to Moscow, or are you ready to embrace a different direction?
Saying strategic partnership, that means it is for a long time. But we have good relations with Iran, and we are doing our best to keep our good relations with the United States and with Iran, and in the same time be fully devoted to our international commitments.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Prime Minister, and I thank you very much indeed for being on HARDtalk.
Thank you very much.